All right, good evening, everyone. It's 6 p.m. on September 20, 2022. At this time, I'll call the meeting of the Cleveland County Board of Commissioners to order. Madam Clerk, do we have a quorum?
Yes, sir, we have a quorum.
All right, this time I'll recognize the Veterans Advisory Board, who's going to do our invocation and lead us in the pledge.
I told him I'm on that board, but I'm gonna stand up here.
Proper salute, and pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bow heads, please. Our most gracious Heavenly Father, our Creator, we assemble together before you to ask for your forgiveness of our shortcomings. We ask for your guidance and strength for those assembled to discuss the business of this county. We ask for the wisdom and thought towards and what is best for the citizens of this community as we try to work together. May the grace of God watch over us within our safety, health, and well-being of those that are hurting within our communities. In Jesus Christ's name, amen.
Mr. Chair, if I may.
Yes, sir.
You want to give us feel for the veterans. Mr. Chair, if we may.
Yes, sir.
Give us feel for the Veterans Day.
Well, if it pleases the county commissioners, we have a Veterans Day parade honoring those who have served in our community on November 11th. The parade begins at 10 a.m., and there is a service after the parade where we do a service and honor the veterans in our county, and that begins at 11 a.m. at the court square, or the historic court square. So.
Thank you, sir.
And to enter the parade, you need to do an application.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. If folks in the community wish to participate in the parade, bring a vehicle, or if any veterans wish to bring a vehicle to the parade, contact Ms. Valerie McCoy. The information is on the flyer that we'll be handing out, and we need those by November 7th. If you don't fill out an application, we'll still let you join. You just got to go to the back of the line. So.
Or you can get an application down to Veterans Office downstairs.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next, we'll recognize any elected officials present tonight.
Town Council, Mooresboro.
Betsy Harnage, Register of Deeds.
Next, we'll recognize any veterans we have tonight.
You want to start?
Marty
Service,
Marty-
name, service.
Marty Pendergraft, U.S. Army. Arthur Gordon, U.S. Air Force.
Linda Lane, United States Marine Corps.
Tom McCoy, United States Army.
Dennis Steve, U.S. Air Force.
Brandon Root, U.S. Army National Guard.
Johnny Hudson, U.S. Army. We have the veteran pin. Does anyone of y'all doesn't have one of the veteran pins, county veteran pins? You have one?
Yes, sir. I got my dad's.
Okay, got your dad.
Yes, he passed, so I collected his
Well,
pins.
let me give you, come forward, let me give you one, just print you one too.
Dennis,
Come on.
you don't, Dennis don't have one. Dennis don't have one.
That's gonna come up.
You can have your own, too.
Yeah.
Even though you got your dad, you need your own, you know what? I appreciate your service.
Appreciate it, sir. Thank you.
Appreciate your service.
Thank you all. Next, we'll recognize any law enforcement that's present.
Danny Howe, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
Philip Todd, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office. Frank Little, Cleveland County Sheriff's Office.
Thank you, guys. And last, we'll recognize any county department heads.
Martha Thompson, Legal Department.
Alice Mooney, Human Resources.
Karen Belton, Assistant County Manager.
Tiffany Hansen, Health Department.
Brad Trawick, Cooperative Extension.
Sherry Lavender, Tax Department.
All right, thank you, guys. Thank you for what you do. First item on the agenda is a motion to adopt the proposed agenda. Are there any items to be added to the agenda?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda to remove item H from the consent agenda.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a motion to amend the proposed agenda by removing H from the consent agenda. With that, all those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed will say no. All right, motion carries. Next item on the agenda is special recognition. This would be the Agriculture Economic Development Innovative Award. Commissioner Bridges and Greg Trawick.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greg Trawick has been the director of Cleveland County Cooperative Extension since 1992. Several weeks ago, Greg Trawick's agriculture economic development work was recognized by the North Carolina Association of County Commissioners with their 2022 Civic Excellence in Innovation Award. And we would like to acknowledge that here in his home county tonight. It's a prestigious honor, statewide honor, and I wanted to make sure that everybody in the county knew about this too. And I'm going to read parts of a press release that details some of Greg's work in agriculture and economic development, and then we'll ask him to come forward and maybe say a few words to us and get some pictures. In recent years, much of Greg's work has been focused on finding innovative ways to include agriculture in Cleveland County's economic development efforts, a priority that was identified by this Board of Commissioners about 5 years ago. Because agriculture contributes $140 million to Cleveland County's economy each year, sustaining and growing the farming industry is critically important. Greg's approach to economic development has been to leverage resources and provide technical assistance that empowers farms and agribusiness to implement innovative ideas, diversify, and expand. One of the great things he's done is to secure a stream of funding to construct a state-of-the-art pavilion in Uptown Shelby that's home to the Foothills Farmers Market. He's got several grants for the farmers market, and the most recent award is to implement a new strategic business plan that improves operations and increases the sale of local foods. As a result, vendor participation has grown to 105, and customer traffic has increased 36% this year. He secured a $238,000 award from the Tobacco Trust Fund to finance major improvements in the livestock arena at the Cleveland County Agriculture Fair. He secured a USDA value-added producer grant that helped Wilson Farms introduce custom blended mulch bales into the regional marketplace. And now all the Lowe's and Home Depot stores within 200 miles sell Cleveland County's merchandise. Funding received from the North Carolina Agriculture Development and Farmland Protection Program helped launch Cleveland County's Regional Grain Project in 2017. The grant helped ASR Grain Company purchase new machinery to store, dry, and clean grains like barley, rye, and wheat so that they can be channeled into malting, distilling, and flour milling markets. Access to these markets is generating substantially more income for grain growers in Cleveland County and the surrounding region. By meeting strict quality standards, grain grown in Cleveland County is used to manufacture craft beers, Southern Biscuit flour, Bojangles biscuits, and Lance crackers. This year, he received a second award that equipped ASR Grain Company to start manufacturing and spreading custom blended fertilizer. Already, more than 80 row croppers, forage producers, and sod farms in North and South Carolina are using new service to increase their productivity, yields, and profit. In addition to benefiting farmers and agribusiness directly and growing the local economy, Greg has successfully showcased this success of these projects to the Board of County Commissioners, leveraging our support for Extension's involvement in future agriculture economic development projects. So, Greg, would you come forward and let me give you this? Commissioners, would y'all like to come down and have a picture made? Sure. We appreciate all your efforts, sir.
opposed, Phil.
I'd like to thank all of you for this local recognition. It's been an honor to live and work and sometimes play a little bit in Cleveland County for the last 30 years, I think, that I've been here. And I was very surprised when I came in the back door. I've got an entourage of folks in the back that's kind of my support team, local farmers, folks from the Farmers Market Board, members of my staff, and Extension and Community Association. So it's just a pleasure to be here. I wanted to especially thank the county manager and commissioners for the dialogue that we had just a few days ago with the farming community to talk about issues that are of concern to them and look for ways that we can work together to grow and sustain agriculture in Cleveland County. And Brandon Roop and I have just been having some conversations in recent days about trying to establish an ag economic advisory group to talk about these issues and find new opportunities and ways that we can continue to work together. So these are exciting times, and I appreciate it very, very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary.
Next item on the agenda is the consent agenda. Brian?
Thank you, Commissioner Gordon. Several items for consideration. Item A are minutes from your September 6th regular commissioner meeting. Those minutes are in your packet for review and consideration. Item B is from tax administration. We have one pending refund and release. This is for $1,209.55. If you recall, we had a similar request at the last commissioner meeting. This one simply did not make the timeline and missed the deadline to apply, but otherwise would have been compliant with all the parameters to be approved by staff. So here this evening seeking approval of that pending refund. Item C is from the Sheriff's Office. This is budget amendment number 14 on the year. Request to budget $8,700 of grant funds received and to be used to purchase a long-range acoustic device speaker system to be allocated to the negotiation insert team to use when they get called out. Item D is from Travel Tourism. This is budget amendment number 15 on the year. Request to budget $500 and a local grant from Home Trust Bank. And this will be for a sponsorship in the Livermush Festival that's coming up. Item E is from Cleveland County Schools, budget amendment number 16. This is to request to budget the proceeds from the North Carolina Needs-Based Public School Capital Fund. As you recall, those dollars were acquired through a competitively based statewide grant application, $28.5 million that will be used for the construction of an auditorium at Crest and Burns High School. Item F, also from the Sheriff's Office, is a request to remove a service weapon. Many of you may know Deputy Roy Dyer, who served 32 years in law enforcement, is retiring and on October the 1st, and requesting customarily to also remove and donate his firearm, which is the Glock 9mm, the serial numbers BDKT 910. Item G is consideration for sale of county-owned property, parcel 22052, which is located at 281 Light Oak Circle. This is about a little less than 2/10 of an acre. The county has owned it since 2009. We obtained it during foreclosure. Our total investment for the acquisition is $4,158.79. We have a beginning opening bid of $1,801, and so at this point, recommending that the commissioners begin the initial upset bid process, accepting that bid of $1,801. We'll do all the necessary reporting requirements, and then if there is no upset bid, bring back whatever that number may be at the conclusion of the upset bid period. And finally, for consideration, skipping item H, item I is a request to approve a resolution that's needed for a planning grant application for stormwater management. There is no match. The maximum grant award is $90,000, and that would be through the North Carolina Department of Public Safety. This resolution is required as part of the grant process. That concludes short consent. Happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Brian. Commissioners, you've been presented the consent agenda. Is there any questions or any discussion? Hearing none, I entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented.
So moved.
I'll second.
Motion second. All those in favor will say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed will say no. All right, next item on the agenda is the end of the year report. Mr. Epley, you're up again.
So just as a recap, trying to stay committed to summarizing kind of the way our fiscal year concluded. As customary, this time of year, we've put together a snapshot. You also have your printed end-of-year report, and this is a synopsis of what we've seen. Obviously, as you all know, the county operates on a fiscal year that runs July through June. So back on June the 30th of 2022, we concluded our previous fiscal year. We're currently working through all of the necessary accruals and wrap-up reports that are required for that. We're also concluding our external audit as required by the North Carolina Fiscal Control Act, and that audit report will be submitted to the Local Government Commission on or before October 31st. And as part of that, and just as this commitment to prioritizing communication, our final written report of the year is, as I mentioned earlier, typically is this end-of-year report, which is delivered in September. But really has become a year-round process of trying to really provide real-time fluid feedback and operational status updates on projects and where things are. Although you have a very robust strategic plan with 5 focus areas, tonight's presentation specifically will be highlighting your focus area of physical sustainability. And inside your physical sustainability focus area, you have 6 really identifiable, measurable goals. One is this commitment to being an employer of choice. I always take a lot of pride in bragging on the board that at least since I've been an employee with Cleveland County all the way back to 2014, that's been a continued focus and somewhere that I think most of our employees would demonstrate their appreciation, and I think the data shows that in our ability to recruit and retain. You also outlined goals this year of partnering with Cleveland County Schools with a focus on advancing teacher supplements and out-year capital, maintaining an accelerated funding ladder for the community college, increasing our fund balance, unassigned fund balance to at least 20%, up from 18 in previous years, really continuing to exercise and implement this facility master plan, and then focusing on automation, lean principles, and operational efficiencies. So the way that I have organized tonight's conversation and presentation is to first take a snapshot at our current year financial performance, and then I'll transition to an overview of fund balance and some key ratios. I think that's, with all the moving parts, we have about 4,000 general ledger accounts, and so it's very easy to get bogged down in the details with all the moving parts that we have. So an analytical way to tell kind of organizational performance is to look at a broader approach, which is fund balance. It kind of summarizes how all things are working together. And then I'll conclude by giving a snapshot of where our debt portfolio currently is and where we think it may be. Our revenue for the year, as you can see, concluded at a total collected of about $140.2 million. I would point out our property tax collection percentage was 98.58, which is the highest in the history of Cleveland County. You can see the chart here on the bottom, which indicates steady improvement. We did have a dip in 2020 because essentially the department was closed for the fourth quarter of 2020 for COVID. Hard to collect taxes when we're not here, but we did finish the year in a very optimal place. Ad valorem property tax make up about 53% of our total revenue portfolio. Sales tax and restricted intergovernmental, as is customary, continue to be our second and third largest source. Sales tax is our second largest revenue source at about 14%, and you can see steady growth, and this is across all sectors. I would point out that North Carolina as a state has continued to see really a growth and expansion in sales tax, which is a good indication of how the economy is performing. I know that As a state, we were recently highlighted as the #1 business-friendly state and place to do business in the entire nation. And I think that's evidenced here by consumers willing to spend. One thing that I point out, even though you can see over time, all the way back to 2014-15, that we've experienced, other than a brief dip there in 2020, again, because of COVID and those fourth quarter regulatory shutdowns, when I say that the growth is across all articles, sales tax comes back to Cleveland County in two ways. One is a point of sale, meaning if you buy stuff here, some of those dollars stay here. And another distribution methodology is the state collects all and then redistributes on a per capita basis. And when we see growth in both areas, that tells us that, A, the state's doing great, which is good news, but we're also locally performing at a high level, and our merchants and retailers here are experiencing success. Another good indicator that we're looking at is occupancy tax. Occupancy tax, as you know, in Cleveland County is 6%. So for hotels, motels that are located outside of a municipal boundary, the county collects 6% of those fees. Inside a municipal boundary, we get 3%. The municipality gets the other 3%. We concluded the year with our highest occupancy tax revenue to date at almost $600,000, which is significant. And the other detail that would be in your end of the year report that's not necessarily highlighted here, but we've also seen a higher average daily room rate, which is indicative of we're not just giving the rooms away. So if you go back to the tourism hospitality market in 2020, when people weren't traveling, we still saw moderately high occupancy rates, but the average daily room rental was down significantly because people weren't willing to pay a market price. And so all of that has rebounded. We see strong indicators across the sector, and people are choosing Cleveland County as a destination community. Clearly, it's easy to know that there is bypass construction and a lot of industry construction with the casino and a variety of other things that bring construction workers in that often stay in hotels and drive some of those costs up. But we feel confident that a lot of this, the majority of this occupancy tax revenue is from people choosing to travel to Cleveland County as a destination. Next, I'll highlight EMS billing. As you all know, back in 2016, the county decided to cancel a long-term contract with a third-party billing agency. That company's name was Comstar, and we were paying about $150,000 a year in a contract fee, and that company was collecting roughly 52% of our EMS bills. We brought that in-house. Probably 25-30% of the counties in North Carolina do that, and since that point, we've experienced steady growth with our highest year to date at about $4.2 million in collected revenue this year, significantly higher than where we were a little over $2.5 million only about 6 or 7 years ago. Building permit and activity, again, and continuing to see activity and vibrancy in the local construction economy. Here you can just see that we're starting to see an uptick in really all sectors, but commercial was one of the most high as far as change. Transitioning to the expenditure side of our fiscal year, I'd highlight this as just a quick optic to show how our dollars are spent by function. So literally what this is indicating, of every dollar that we spend, about 30 cents goes to education, about 26 cents goes to human services, public health, social services, and another 26% goes to public safety. If I had this compared to 5 or 6 years ago, you would have seen a very intentional movement. Human services was at about 31-32%. That's come down. Public safety would have been at 19 or 20%. That's gone up. And general government, where a lot of the more centrally administered functions that we try to perform, has ticked up from about 7 or 8% to 11%. So this compares favorably when we benchmark to other similarly sized North Carolina counties. And we feel like this allocation percentage proportionally represents where we should be, and we've right-sized over time. Part of that, as I mentioned, is this really steady, steadfast spend amount in public health and social services. So this is just reflecting on the last 7 or 8 years to basically say what we're spending today is equivalent or less than what we were spending 7 or 8 years ago. And that's in a market where our Medicaid eligibility, which is predominantly who these two departments serve, has grown from about 28% of our total population to about 37%. So you got 8,000 or 9,000 more folks that are receiving these benefits, and yet our budget's been able to remain constant and flat. And I would point out this is the net cost. So social services had about a $21 million budget, but about $7.6 million of that comes from local money. The public health department would have about a $10 or $11 million budget, and about $2.5 million come from local. And that net number is as you would imagine, offset by grant activity, offset by collection efforts for billable services, those type things. And so our team really works hard to be efficient in their cost spend, but they also work hard to make sure that they're looking for opportunities to generate revenue that may help keep this number manageable as well. Our Sheriff's Department and Detention Center, as you can see, there was a needed catch-up opportunity over the last previous years. We finished at about a $12.7 million spend in the Sheriff's Office, a tick over $8 million in the Detention Center. Our EMS department finished at about $8.3 million. I'd point out there's a spike here in last year, so it looks like we spent less. This, as the board recalls, last year we entered into a long-term lease for new apparatus, new ambulances, and just from an accounting perspective, that was a $1.5 million spend. Even though we're amortizing that over time on our books, it shows it as a one-time allocation because of the way you have to account for leases. So that number should be, if it was actual dollars spent, cash outflow would be more consistent and down. Our human capital, which we often say out loud is our most important asset, our employees that serve our community, that show the dedication to be better and to do more with less every single day. We've tried to look for a way to really quantify what it means to be an employer of choice, and the most obvious way is to pay a fair and equitable wage for the effort and energy and talent that our people are putting in. Here, the chart on the left just shows that we've been right-sizing as an organization with FTE headcount for some time. We've reduced our overall headcount by about 100 in the last 4 to 5 years, and our total spend has really remained flat. We were spending about $39 million a couple years ago. We're spending about $40 million now on people, but that's being divided, as you can see, over a lot fewer FTEs, which allows our average wage to go up and makes us more of an attractive place to work, and we believe that helps us acquire and retain higher level of talent, which creates a higher and better outcome for the people receiving our services. We also get granular at a detailed level, and we track how much we're spending on energy consumption. This is one example of many of trying to really measure what we're doing. You can see this year we were up about $36,000 at about a $1.5 million spend for utility consumption compared to about $1.47 last year. That's because we added 2 EMS bases as well as a public defender's office. But generally, still much lower than we were 4 or 5 years ago. We've accomplished that through intelligent commissioning, very simple stuff, setting a thermostat on a timer, not cooling buildings when people aren't there, transitioning to LED bulbs, very simple things that over time, and when you have as much square footage as we do, that really makes a material difference. Still spending more than our peers. When you look at similarly sized counties on a cost per square foot basis, we're still spending more. We think that's predominantly, or clearly it's predominantly attributable to our courthouse across the street, which is very energy inefficient. The former, or the current DSS building, again, more than 50 years old. The level of energy consumption is just higher than normal. But over time, as we reprogram the uses, and then also recognize that many of those facilities are end of life, as we upgrade that technology, we would expect this number to continue to decrease and more right-sized compared to what our peer groups are seeing. Here's something else I want to really highlight and point out. This is our property and liability. As you all know, we're self-funded for general liability. We do purchase property insurance coverage. And you can see here, really experienced a high level of volume through this fund, really 16, 17, all the way through 18, 19. But we now have, along with our county attorney and his leadership, we have 2 in-house counsels that, and people hear the word attorney or lawyer and they think court, and certainly there's a component of what they do that involves the court system and litigation and some of those things that are just processes of doing business. But one of the biggest things that they do is help advise on policy that may reduce risk, or general things like automobile accidents and recouping what dollars are rightfully to the counties, and chasing some of those things. And our net cost for property and liability this year was less than $130,000 compared to $1.4 million only 3 years ago. And so for an organization our size with as many moving parts as we have, when you compare that level of investment, I think that is something to be incredibly proud of. A lot of credit goes to Martha Thompson, who's here behind me. She's taken on this risk management function and done an incredible job. So I would say that the return on our investment for that team has been easily measurable and well done. Also point out that our Employee Health and Wellness Fund, it's about approaching an $11 million fund. And this is an optic of our monthly claims. As again, we're self-insured here. We do have a third-party administrator that's Blue Cross Blue Shield who charges us a small, roughly $95,000 to $100,000 a month administrative fee for processing claims. And the rest of this number would just be for health claims. And so you can see a fund that was really growing at an unsustainable rate, and then beginning in 2018, starting to see some of those returns in 2020 for disease management. So as the board knows, when at the beginning of our plan year, all of our covered lives go through a biometric system where we're testing A1C, we're measuring waist circumference, we're identifying risk factors. And for folks who need some additional help and need some additional guidance, they're at no cost to them, provided an opportunity to have some wellness counseling and glucose monitoring and a variety of other things that help them have better health outcomes. And oftentimes it's about changing health behaviors. But ultimately, not only does it create a healthier, happier, more productive employee, it saves dollars on paying claims to hospitals and doctors and those type of things. The other thing that I would say is when you look at our emergency room utilization rate, folks are generally more educated now to be a concerted effort about what is a acute issue, what's a primary care issue, what's an urgent care issue versus what's truly an emergency room or an inpatient issue, and those decisions help to lead to lower costs. So I'm very pleased that when I look at our monthly spend at $596,000, that's really been very consistent, even in an environment where medical inflation has been substantial over the last 4 or 5 years. We're also managing a tremendous amount of grants. We're very thankful for that. Right now, we've got about almost $73 million worth of just state-directed grants that the North Carolina General Assembly has been incredibly gracious to award to Cleveland County and entrust us with the responsibility of administering these in a fair and equitable way that really creates a lot of transformational change in Cleveland County. We're putting all these to work. You can see there kind of a status update where each of those are. Some of these are just passed through and go on to other places. Some of these stay here inside the county, inside county government. But it's something that certainly advances the Board of Commissioners' strategic plan without putting an inequitable burden on our local taxpayers. Quick update on our capital improvement plan. I mentioned earlier that we completed 2 EMS bases in the northern end, Kaiser and Lawndale. We also have a base at Bellwood. So, as I've heard many of our board members say, the north end of our county now with 3 EMS bases that are staffed 24/7 with an ambulance is as well covered as it's ever been. We've also relocated IT out of the courthouse and into this building. We have several projects in progress. Obviously, our Justice Center campus, which is our largest, most robust project, Health and DSS co-locating, which we know will have an operational cost savings that will be substantial, should be complete in January. The Board of Elections campus, Shell Building 4, and the shooting complex are also projects that are in progress. Some things that are in the queue that are still in the evaluation and planning process. Child care facility with this concept of acknowledging value to employees versus cost. 911 communications along with an EOC and the fulfillment over at Duran Mill, which is currently going through some environmental phase 1, phase 2 discovery, are things that are just around the corner. One of your other goals under your fiscal sustainability was continued acceleration to the Cleveland Community College. As you can see here, FY22 saw a $400,000 increase. That was $250,000 in capital, $150,000 in operations. That represented roughly a 17% increase in total funding. FY23, the budget that you guys just approved about 60 days ago, saw another $250,000 increase, which is another 9%. So I feel like we're making meaningful movement in that strategic area. The other goal that was related to education was being very hyper-focused on Cleveland County Public Schools, making sure that there's adequate funding for classroom teacher supplements, recognizing that recruitment and retention at a local level, that is the controllable mechanism, and then also trying to put some emphasis on out-year capital planning that's married to this facility plan that was asked for, as well as a prioritization plan that we expect over the next few weeks and months to make sure that we can prioritize projects and dedicated funding. The Commissioner escrow for FY22 concluded with approximately a little less. Actually, there was fourth quarter didn't perform quite as well as we had thought, but almost $3 million, with 50% of that being dedicated to teacher supplements, a 2% increase there that moved Cleveland County Public Schools to a 7.75 classroom teacher supplement rate, and the remaining being retained there in an escrow for future capital on a priority basis. And lastly, again, this kind of sums it all up, this snapshot of our unreserved fund balance, where we're looking at our equity compared to our annual expenditures. We concluded the year at 20.1, actually it was 20.12%. Our peer groups have moved up a little bit. You can see that during 2020, I think other folks, a lot of unallocated dollars. So, for example, ARPA money that had a $10 million revenue forgiveness. Some folks accounted for that in their general fund, so we saw fund balances spike. You all know in Cleveland County, we did not account for that in our general fund. We put it out into a project fund to help us fund our Justice Center with some pay-as-you-go capital. But in some of our peer groups, those federal dollars that were allocated that were unrestricted often ended up in the general fund, pushing their fund balance up just a shot. But we still accomplished the board's goal of being above 20%. And I would tell you that 20% of unassigned fund balance for an organization with a $135 million general fund is a good place to be. That's a good place to be, even though we're a little bit short of that group average. Here, I put a quick profile in. This was issued by Moody's. Most of you know that Moody's and S&P are the nation's, really the world's two premier public bond rating agency companies. So think about this as a credit report. This was issued in October of 2021. I expect another one in about 30 to 45 days. They typically do these annually during October. And I've highlighted, and I know it's tough to see on the screen there, but I've highlighted just a section of the credit overview that really highlights a robust financial position is the word they use, exceptionally light debt and pension burdens, and overall, a really comprehensively well-managed financial structure that's stable and sustainable long-term. And some of the factors that are impacting our score in a not-so-positive way, as we know, continues to be community wealth and diversity in our labor force and economy. So a couple key ratios that we've shared with the board that we've talked about as we are constantly measuring and trying to keep a pulse on our national economy, state economy, and local economy. We put an emphasis on this concept of property tax dependency and sales tax dependency, recognizing that diversity in our revenue portfolio gives us more fluidity and protection against any type of recession. We compare ourselves to these regional peers here, and it really compare really well to about 54% historically property tax, 13% sales tax. We concluded the year by being less dependent on property tax. We went 54 to 53, which is very good, and about a 0.5% uptick in sales tax from about 13.5 to about 14. Cash on hand today, if you're measuring liquidity ratio, and just asking, what's our ability to pay our short-term, long-term obligations. We have about $79.8 million of restricted cash on hand and about $66.3 million of unrestricted. That restricted dollars would primarily be the grants that we talked about. So when you receive money from an outside agency, it's obviously restricted for the purpose that you were awarded those dollars. Most often that's grant proceeds or debt proceeds. Unrestricted doesn't mean that it has no purpose. It means that's what you have left over to pay all of your other obligations and operating budgets, things like salaries and those type of things. Debt balance, this is something that we've talked about many times before, but just as an update, our 10-year payout's well over 90%, which means that over the next 10 years, if we'd issued no more debt, 90% of it will be paid off. And that is exceptional. It compares, that's why Moody's says we have an exceptionally light debt burden. We've known that for some time. We've managed ourselves to this position, recognizing that to fully execute on the priorities identified in the 2017 Master Facility Plan, including the Justice Center, Board of Elections, 911 Center, Health and DSS co-locating, and several other projects that we would need to be able to bring on some debt. And so here I've modeled simply what that would look like over time. Obviously, the Justice Center is the the largest project. So this is that principal balance, and you can see that, going down based on existing debt load. Here is debt service. So these are the dollars, the cash outflow that would be part of our budget each year, how much we're paying. And you can see that generally declines too. There are some balloon payments out there associated with a couple of pieces of our debt, so it kind of spikes back up. But the orange here would represent existing debt, and again, the expense side of how much we expect to pay. And then this gray would represent if we, the proportionate share that we expect to finance in a public bond market for our Justice Center, where that would take our total debt load. So if we move forward with that project in 2026, this would be our total annual debt service at about $6.2 million. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we positioned our debt balances to take that on. We've also been funding our debt service fund in anticipation for that. As you all know, in 2022, we had a $1.5 million surplus to our debt service fund. This year, another $750,000, so there'll be a $2.25 million surplus to that fund. The following year, we have a $250,000 plan, and then you conclude in 25 maximizing that so that once you begin your debt service payments for your Justice Center, that affordability analysis is really complete, and you have a lot of confidence in your ability to finish that project. So as I review these goals from a physical sustainability perspective, I feel like we've had a commitment to an employer of choice. We've been able to do, over the last 5 years, 25% increases in employee comp. I think that we're competitive across all markets. We also are continuing our employee performance bonus program. That was just executed on last week. I feel like we have a strategy in place with a focus on advancement of teacher supplements to meet the commissioner's goal and highlighting that area, as well as out-year capital. Same for the community college. Our fund balance concluded at just a shaving over 20 at 20.12%. Our facility plan is in movement. There's momentum there, and we're constantly looking for ways to be more operationally efficient. I'll leave you with this slide. When I look at our organization in totality, even though this report was more on the financial side and how we concluded 6/30/2022, as an organization, where we were 6 or 7 years ago versus where we are today, I know that we are clear on our organizational purpose. We've moved away from a county government that often was undefined in that and often siloed in our approach. And I think that there's more of a commitment to collaboration and serving our community and really hitting that. Our people, many of whom worked here for a long, long time, went through a period where they may have felt undervalued, maybe disengaged from the Board of Commissioners strategic plan. And I think that we've really made an investment to acknowledge those folks and to really communicate that they are our most valued asset. From a technology perspective, looking at our systems, people, technology, and physical infrastructure, technology was critically under-prioritized. We moved from this DOS-based 1991 black screen to a Windows improvement. We're currently working on an IT strategic plan that focuses on automation, customer interface, and data security. And so we're improving there. And then lastly, our physical infrastructure, which I would characterize as overlooked. Now we have a plan, and we've got to execute on that plan, and it's going to be a long-term commitment. But I think it will set Cleveland County government up to be successful long-term. And to that, I say thank you to the Board of Commissioners for your vision and your priority setting and your governance. And I look forward to what this upcoming fiscal year deliverables may look like. Happy to answer any questions, Mr. Chairman.
All right, thank you for the report, Brian. Commissioners, you've heard the report. Do you have any questions for Brian? Comments or questions?
I'd like to first thank Brian and the entire staff for the work they do. This shows the amount of work that you do in a year. So we feel like you're doing a really good job.
Thanks, sir. Anyone else?
Just like to echo the same comments. We appreciate all your hard work. We realize that this is more than an 8 to 5 job many times, and we appreciate all you put into it. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you, Brian. Next, Commissioners, do you have anything you'd like to report? Hear none. Brian, Tim, staff, anybody, anything you need to report? All right, if not, the next meeting of the Cleveland County Board of Commissioners will be held on Friday, September 23rd, this week at 8:30 at the Cleveland County Health Department located at 200 South Post Road. This will be for a commissioner's work session. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to recess to reconvene on Friday, the 23rd, beginning at 8:30.
So moved.
Second.
Motion second. Any discussion? If not, all those in favor will say aye. Aye. Those opposed will say no.